Sikkim 365 and Baylor Plus have teamed up to bring Baylor fans the ultimate content bundle. You can sign up now for $17.99 a month, a $5 monthly savings, and get instant access to all premium content on both websites. For more information, visit either sikkim365.com or baylorplus.com today. What's up, Baylor family? Welcome to Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. It's Friday, October 4th, and Grace and I are excited to go into our offensive keys of the game for Baylor against number 16 Iowa State and give our game predictions for what's a pretty big game for Baylor and both Iowa State. But first, here's Grayson's visit with Baylor deep snapper Garrison Grimes.
So, Garrison, I know that this offseason has probably been a journey for you coming back from injury last year, suffering that tough injury. I think it was against UCF. What's this offseason kind of been like for you, just trying to rehab, and how challenging has it been?
So anybody hears the news that they're out for a season, that it's going to be a 10-month recovery. I mean, that's going to be hard for anybody to hear. But the way that my parents raised me, I was able to know that everything happens for a reason. That even though it looked like it sucked in the moment, that was in God's plan. And through that, I was able to kind of learn some hard life lessons. And even if I say that I'm putting my identity in who God says I am, it's easy to get caught up in the football world because that's what we do all day, every day for hours on hours. So when it all gets taken away from you, it's kind of a not easy reminder that you can't put your identity in anything of the world because it'll just let you down. And that's probably the biggest lesson I learned. It was a long off season and a lot of time spent in the training room, and was able to spend some time with a couple other guys that actually got hurt the same week as me, and was able to minister to them through that as well, and try and be a light in the training room because we definitely had a lot of guys in there this last season.
Has faith always been something really important for you and your family?
It has. My parents raised me in a great way. They are strong believers from the start, and they live it out too. Something that has always stuck with me is when my dad was coaching at LSU, the football environment there is harsh. The SEC, it's crazy. Fans are crazy. And if the coaches lost a game or the team lost a game, a lot of the coaches wouldn't show their face on Sundays because of the harsh environment and everything. But my dad would make a point to greet at church every week, no matter the outcome of a game. And in the moment, I just thought it was normal. But the more I grew up, I realized how much of an impact that had on me and my faith, and realizing that we can't put our identity in anything, like I talked about earlier, especially football, even though it's easy to. And yeah, my parents have had tremendous impact on my faith journey.
You feel like that was not saying that you would have left Baylor to go to Kansas where your dad is currently the offensive coordinator, but do you think faith is something that also drew you to maybe staying at Baylor?
100%. I just being completely authentic and open, I was leaning towards transferring for a long time, and I thought that that's what the Lord was calling me to do. I go to Harris Creek, the local church here, and there were a few consecutive sermons that talked about don't stay where you're at because, if you're comfortable there, and don't build roots where you're at, and go where God calls you. And I thought for sure it was all right, the Lord's telling me I need to go. And the head pastor at Harris Creek, his name is Jonathan Pekluda, or JP. I was talking to him after one of his sermons, and I was kind of telling him what was going on. And he said, I feel like it would be easier for you to go because, I wouldn't have to deal with the stuff that was being said here about my dad. And I would just kind of be with my family and take like kind of escape what was going on here. And that just completely changed my perspective. And JP talked about how he didn't think I was done with my ministry here yet. At the time, we were starting a player-led Bible study, and it was going good. It was taking off. We had a bunch of guys going every week. So me staying here was, I'd say, solely on where I thought God was calling me to be.
Has that kind of been tough for you though? Because I know when you got to Baylor, your dad's here, your
Mhm.
family's here, and then now that's all different now.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's required a lot of probably growing up and everything like that. Has that
Mhm.
been a tough process?
It's been hard. It's my first time away from family. So that, taking that first step and, not being with my parents, even though I wasn't living with them, like I could just go to their house on the weekends and see them. So kind of taking a step back, and it definitely helped me grow in my faith. And I feel like it helped me and my parents' relationship as well. Because, Kansas as well, they're not doing great right now. And I'm able to encourage my dad, and he's able to encourage me, and really kind of going from like me being his son to like a brother in Christ. And we're able to minister to each other and pray for each other. And it's definitely been good. So it's hard, but there's, like I said earlier, there's more good that comes out of it.
So this week, Dave Aranda kind of talked about this mood in the locker room, that there's momentum, a feeling that, y'all are better than your record states, that the talent is there, that guys are driven and ready. Do you feel like it's kind of still coming together, even though the results haven't shown it?
I think so, for sure. It's definitely frustrating because we know that we're so much more of a talented team than what it shows, and we're just a couple plays away from being 4-1 or 5-0. And I think the attitude in the locker room is good right now. There's a lot of like, I'm just sick of losing. Like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes this week to go out and start winning games. No matter what it takes. It's a Tuesday practice. I'm tired. Like, guys are flying around. There's good energy on the field. And I think it's coming together. There's some older guys that are stepping up, and I think that it's going to show on Saturday.
Do you feel like maybe unlike last year, do you feel like there's more leadership and enough leaders to kind of help overcome a slow start?
I think so, for sure. For a lot of the younger guys, especially the guys that started last year, having that year under your belt, it just allows guys to grow up. And there's more of a care factor, for sure. I think that was the biggest problem last year is, if we lost a game, there's guys in the locker room that are kind of joking around, and the older guys are like, what's going on? And this year it's like we lose a game and nobody's talking. Like, everybody's bought in this year, and I'm hoping that this different kind of approach we're having can help translate to games.
As far as special teams specifically, I know y'all are a really close group. Has it been kind of hard? I know the past couple of weeks, the kicking game specifically has had some struggles. What's that kind of been like for y'all, and what kind of challenges have y'all kind of been trying to overcome?
It's man, it's been frustrating because, in my opinion, I think we have the best kickers in the nation. Isaiah and Connor are both super talented. Their mental game is great, and like I said earlier, like I think we're just so close to really showing like what we can do. And this week, there's been an emphasis of taking a step back, of looking where we were week 1, week 2, and how we can get back in that mindset of fighting complacency, not being okay if we miss a kick, and really, really just like focusing on the little things. Because as a specialist, like, your mental game and focusing on the little details is the most important. And I think that this week the emphasis has been on that. And there's competition in the room. I think the execution that we've had this week has been a lot higher than all previous weeks. And I think we're ready to do what we can as a group to go out and help the team win games. And same thing with Palmer, same thing with Jack. Jack started off the season super hot. The last couple games, there could be some kicks that he might want to take back. And this week in practice, you just see a different level of intentionality. And same with Palmer. Palmer's super, super talented, still a young guy. And his intentionality this week as well has just been, it's different. And I think it's just, we're tired of losing, and we're going to do whatever we can to help the team. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the whole deal.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Garrison, for joining
Mm-hmm.
today, man. And good luck. Good luck this weekend as y'all go up to Ames. It's exciting. It'll be a tough one, but
yeah,
good luck.
It'll be a good game. Appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. See ya.
See ya.
Grayson, great job with Garrison. Obviously, an important key to any team is a deep snapper. It's a lot like the offensive line. They don't show up until they do something bad. So Garrison's been very consistent in his time at Baylor. Nothing that really stands out. And obviously, great history with his family, and obviously former Baylor offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes, his dad. So with that, we're going to move into Baylor's offensive keys to the game, and then at the end, give our predictions for this particular game. But Grayson, as always, I'll toss it up to you for your first keys of the game and what Baylor needs to do offensively to not only make this competitive, but potentially win this game.
I don't like putting a lot of pressure on one player because obviously it's a total team effort in order to have success, especially on the road. But Sora Robertson is going to have to play a really good game of football. And the fact of the matter is up to this point in the season, Iowa State has arguably the best pass defense in the entire country. They're number one in passing efficiency defense by a lot. And yes, some of the teams they've played have been pretty much inept throwing the football, but they've also played Iowa, which is an explosive offense, and Houston has had some high outputs throwing the football, even though it's been inconsistent. And so regardless of what the numbers say, I think we know that that is a strength of Iowa State, is the secondary. And it's an area that they want to take advantage of the other team. They want to make the opposing quarterback be uncomfortable and complete a very low percentage of passes. And on the year, they're giving up 49% completion percentage, which is tough. That is tough to overcome. They're also fifth in turnover margin in the nation. They have 10 forced turnovers through 4 games. So they have been all over the football. They have 9 sacks this season as well, which is 44th. So all of that to say, it all kind of leans back to, can Sora Robertson be efficient? Can Sora Robertson take care of the football? And can he continue to build off of these early season performances that we've seen from him and make it translate to Ames? That's going to be a really key thing. And I hate putting all the pressure on him, but like taking care of the football in this one, being efficient, being able to hit on those deep shots when you get the opportunities to, it's all very important in this matchup, because I think the margin between not just winning and losing this game, but between staying in this game or kind of getting blown out, really is going to probably come down to those little things like converting when you have the opportunity, hitting on the big play when you have the opportunity, and not turning over the football at inopportune times.
Yeah, you have a really good punter in Palmer Williams. And in those games, night games against Ames, the last thing that you want to do, obviously you don't want to get your punt blocked, right? But the last thing that you want to do is not have to punt or not be allowed to punt because you give up the ball. Flip the field. Worst case scenario, give an opportunity to flip the field. Palmer can do that. And it does. I mean, if there's a crowd silencer in a moment when the game's still close, is to flip the field and let it get to the 1 or 2 yard line or inside the 10. And Palmer can do that. It's a great negator to those. And you don't, not only does he give the momentum to turn the ball over to the other team, to the defense, to an offense that's very efficient, but it takes away if you're able to punt. And Baylor's done a great job with that this year. So I'm with you. Sawyer has to be steady. And last week against BYU, his turnovers, his interceptions, you can't take blame off of Sawyer in both of those scenarios because he is a quarterback. He is throwing the football, but a tip pass to the line of scrimmage goes up. First play of the game for Baylor and his interception. And then the last play of the game for Baylor offensively, he takes a shot because he's forcing him downfield, trying to make a play, and truly a play throughout the game that he had made similar throws in the game to Hal Presley. He was just forcing the issue when Baylor didn't have a lot of time. So I think if you feel good about that, you've played multiple games with Sawyer as a quarterback this year, 3 games as a starter. He's done a pretty good job protecting the ball. He has had some throws where It could have been intercepted, but not glaringly. There's not these one after another. You see multiple in a drive. He's pretty protective of the ball. And I think to his credit, Jake Spavital has helped the scheme in that regard of protecting him and making throws. And Sawyer mentioned it in his media availability is like, Coach Spav has done a great job of letting me know beforehand what's coming. That's before the game, during the game, whenever it is. And the coaching player chemistry there has been really strong. So you have faith in Sawyer, but you can't let it snowball. You can't get in that environment and just freak out, right? Like, it's not a home environment like they saw against BYU where he threw a couple interceptions. If that crowd gets on top of you, things can get really difficult for the offense specifically. So I'm with you. Don't turn the football over. It comes down to Sawyer, but also for the running backs. And I will start with that. Like, the running backs protect the football. Like, they did a better job against it with it against BYU, but we saw it in late against Colorado that potentially cost them the game when Dominic Richardson's going to the end zone to score. He fumbles that ball. I don't think it can be overstated in these games. And I mentioned in our defensive keys, you want to get turnovers. There's nothing more important to keep this game close than not turning over the football. So I'll build on what you said. Running backs, ball carriers, protect the football. That one extra yard's not worth it to let the ball hanging out there in the last moments. And I don't know how much Baylor's going to run the football actually with running backs in this game because Iowa State's run defense is always very stout. I don't know what the game plan is going to be there. But when those opportunities come, secure the ball and then get it to your, if it has to be a third down and 5 that you can't get the last yard, give it away and let it punt and be safe with the football and don't let Iowa State get away from you in this one. Definitely
got to take care of the football. I think I'll just go ahead and stick right there with the running backs. And it's not just the running backs, it's the run game in general. A way that you protect your quarterback and you protect your offensive line and pass protection is by running the football. And Baylor was so bad at running the football against BYU. It was not working. Their running backs had 16 carries for 34 yards. That is just not getting it done at all. Iowa State's giving up 153 yards rushing per game, 4 yards per carry. They've been tested. They faced some really good rushing attacks. I mean, North Dakota, very good rushing football team. Iowa, also very good running football team. So that kind of skews the stats a little bit. But Houston ran for 171 yards and 5.7 yards per carry. Part of that was Donovan Smith. He had, I think, 47 yards on the ground in that game. And so Sawyer's going to have to run the football some. They're going to have to figure out ways to get creative. Maybe it's giving receivers handoffs. Maybe it's trying to run off tackle instead of just straight inside zone type stuff. And so I'm very curious about that. It is a battle that I think both you and I are probably thinking is going to go Iowa State's way. But it's something that Baylor has to try to do, because if they can't run the ball at all, that's just asking way too much out of your passing game, I think. And so if they can get to a healthy margin against Colorado, they had like 166 yards rushing. If they can get up above, 130, somewhere in 130 to 150 range, I think it gives them a shot to be successful moving the ball consistently. If they can't run the football, then you're probably going to have a lot of 3 and outs. You're probably going to have some situations where your drives don't go as planned and potentially you have turnovers. So they got to have something there that's, somewhat reliable.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that a little bit more before I move on, but I think the difference between this Iowa State defense and the BYU defense is the linebacker play. Iowa State they've been hit hard with injuries at linebacker. I mean, even through the beginning of the season, I think their top 2 linebackers projected for the season have played a combined 5 snaps. So they are very thin and very young at linebacker right now, whereas BYU, very experienced, very good in that particular scheme. Very similar schemes as well. 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers right behind them. That kind of the old school Matt Rule, Phil Snow ran it at Baylor, so Baylor fans are kind of familiar with it. They're going to fill gaps and they're going to come downhill and play physical. That's what they want to do. Their linebackers are just young. So to me, a key in this particular one for the offense is, can the offensive line handle a 3 down front for Iowa State to let plays be made on the linebackers? Because I think that's where the run game matchup is going to win is control those 3 down linemen and kind of get good blocks on them and then let your running backs get to the second level. Because I would say the Iowa State linebackers kind of over pursue. They're really anxious. They will be coached up a little bit better in this particular game. So where does that pace of play come from their linebackers? And if Baylor it's kind of the key within the key. But for the run game specifically, if Baylor can control those 3 down linemen, they have a better shot of running the ball against Iowa State, in my mind. It's still going to be tough. It's going to be a challenge, especially when we talk about those 3 safeties coming downhill to make plays. But they can, if they can get that 3 down front moved at all to give their running backs an opportunity to run, there is that potential. And if you watch the games, like you talked about what Iowa State gave up to Houston and what they've given up in the run game in general, it's pretty consistent, like no yards, 10 yards. No, like it's about getting to that second level. And then with a quarterback run too, I think that would be my first key to the game, or second key to the game is, man, you don't want to run Sawyer Robertson too much, but he has shown that ability to run the football. Pick your spots, make it be effective, get a little bit better on the zone read type action to help your running backs a little bit. But let him pick his spots to run the football, because you're going to have to get yards if you want to win this game. However you get them to be in this game, you can't be stagnant. So I don't want Sawyer Robertson to get hurt, but you also want to win the football game. And he's a big kid. He's 6'4", 220. So unless he's out there like rolling an ankle or taking a huge shot to the shoulder or something like that, he's pretty well protected. He's kind of seen that throughout this season in particular. So maybe if Sawyer can get to 50 yards rushing in this game, that might give Baylor a really good chance to win it. And I would say Iowa State's run defense against quarterbacks, not just the Houston game, but throughout the season, with the exception, I would say Iowa, they have shown a tendency to give up rushing yards to quarterbacks. So it's going to be there. It's kind of taking advantage of some linebackers that are a little bit eager and a little bit young.
Yeah, it'll definitely be there. And the more that I continue to watch Baylor play, I mean, the only way they have success really when they're in 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1 situations is when Sawyer's running the football. Because when they've been handing it off up the middle, it just has not worked in those type of situations. And so that's going to be very important, converting on these 3rd and shorts and 4th and shorts. You're going to have to rely, I think, on Sawyer, because that's been kind of their bread and butter as far as what has worked this year. I think they probably just need to continue to lean into it even more, because I think it's almost getting to a point where it's kind of a waste to hand the ball off up the middle and try to get a first down in a 4th and 1 type situation. And so, that would be very important. Definitely a big key for me kind of watching this game as well. Much like the Colorado game, I think there's an opportunity here for Baylor's receivers, Baylor's tight end, and Michael Trigg to win some one-on-one matchups, and they're going to have to. And Baylor did a good job, I felt like, against Colorado of kind of targeting the matchup that they felt like they'd have the most success with. So they didn't throw the ball at Travis Hunter at all. So I kind of anticipate they won't throw the ball much at Darian Porter for Iowa State at all. But then they're going to look around and say, okay, can we win some matchups with our size, with Michael Trigg, having a bigger tight end like that? Can we win on the other side? Against the other cornerbacks where Hal Presley or Josh Cameron or Ketron Jackson is lined up? Can we take some shots there and actually win those battles one-on-one? I think last week we saw Josh Cameron and Hal Presley really take those one-on-one matchups to heart, and they won a lot of them. And they're going to have to do that again this week. They're going to have to find ways to target those individual matchups. And that goes for guys like Monterey Baldwin and Ashton Hawkins as well, finding those matchups in the slot and finding an ability to get open. We saw a little bit more of that from Hawkins this past week. We saw Monterey with the big play against Colorado. It's just the consistency. It's just winning those routes more consistently. And also, Sawyer finding that guy, fast and quick when he is open. Those are very important. So those one-on-one matchups, I think they can be there. You talked about Iowa State giving up explosive plays and things like that. So you're going to have opportunities to take those shots down the field. It's just being smart when you take them and targeting the right matchup as well.
Yeah, and I think, and we didn't see, I think we would have seen more of it had Michael Trigg not been suspended last week. But I think that the 5 receiver sets, we saw it with Gavin Yates out split out wide, Baylor's 3rd tight end, kind of their fullback. If you're not familiar with what Baylor does, he was there. Kelsey Johnson's out, Michael Trigg's out. And so he's your guy as a slot receiver out there, and he had a catch. But I think 5 receiver sets to identify exactly what you're talking about. Where is our matchup? I think Baylor probably wanted to do that a little bit more last week than they were able to because of Kelsey and Michael being out. And so in this particular game, is Kelsey Johnson back? And obviously it sounds like Michael Trigg's going to be back, but he can put some guys in situations, specifically the linebackers. Now, Iowa State's defense is kind of built for that. It was originally developed basically to shut down the Texas Tech Mike Leach offense and hammering guys over. You got 3 safeties, 2 corners, 3 linebackers with one that can kind of do everything. So it's kind of built to defend 5 receiver sets, unless you just don't have a guy that can guard the 5th or 4th receiver. And so is Michael Trigg able to go out there and win one-on-one matchups, or whoever that guy is identified? So line up, spread it out. But also I'll say, we saw it with Bryson Washington in this game. He can catch the football against BYU. We saw it. And so maybe there's some situations where you get those guys involved, and it's kind of sneaky yards, right? It's that 25-yard play that no one's really expecting that gets you to the other side of the field. So when did those things pop up? I just really like a 5 wide receiver set against this particular Iowa State defense. They want to play in a box. They want to have 3 linebackers coming downhill. And whoever the 5th guy is, there's a twins, and if it's a Michael Trigg or it's a Bryson Washington getting split out wide, or Dominic Ritt, whoever it is, take advantage of those matchups. And it plays exactly into what you're saying. Like, I would say it has a really good defense, but there's going to be something that pops up. It has to be identified and then taken advantage of. And I think they're going to be schooled in this particular game to do it.
I agree. And that's an area that they just gotta find ways to continue to win those more times than not. This offense really kind of forces you to win those a lot. It's kind of what it's meant to do. And that's why you brought in transfer wide receivers. That's why you kind of really focused on revamping that room and got a lot of veteran guys. And so you got to rely on them and continue to take those shots and take those opportunities to those guys and hope that they're able to come through and win you those battles. And, like you said, they're built to kind of not give up the big play, but they've given up some big plays so far this year. So it's just finding that healthy balance of getting 5 yards on first down, but then also being able to take advantage when a guy's running downfield, such as, Monterey Baldwin against BYU, where it's like, that's a touchdown. Like you gotta take advantage of those opportunities when they're there.
Yeah, it is. And I think we've heard it all offseason about Baylor's talent and speed at receiver is beginning to show up more now with Sawyer Robertson playing quarterback. I mean, the differences in what Baylor's done offensively since he's taken over are becoming more and more evident. It's a different scheme than what DeQuan Finn was going to be asked to run to the most part. And obviously you hate that he got injured, but it has opened some other things up, and where DeQuan Finn's feet were going to be a big part of the running game. Sawyer's done pretty well in the running game too. So, and I think all of it, and for my final key, it goes back to the offensive line. Like, give your offense a chance, whatever that is. And I think that has to begin in game prep. I think that begins in the all week leading up to this particular game. Figure out something that works. And I know it's tough in a new offensive scheme, and guys are just still filling out the system. Guys have been – Campbell Barrington's been out. Hopefully he's back this week. It sounds like he will be. But find your strengths and lean on it. Iowa State's already identified those strengths, but figure out what works for you and go and attack them on the offensive line. And I will say, man, like, I'm not like so bullish on the offensive line and pass protection that I'm really, to stake my career on or anything like that, but they have gotten to the point where they can run this offense. And I think that's what you wanted to see from this scheme, was protect the offensive line, get the ball out of your hand quick. And Sawyer has done that for the most part. And he took a few sacks against BYU, and he's going to take sacks. But more times than not, they have given him the time that he's needed to get the ball off, just as evident as BYU hadn't given up any touchdown passes this season, and he got 3 of them. And Iowa State, very similar, has only given up 1. So let Sawyer do his thing. Give him enough time to let him do his thing, and you're going to give yourself a chance.
I think it's very clear what this offensive line does well and then what they don't do well. And I think as this season has progressed, it's like, wow, okay, losing Campbell Barrington is massive, especially in a game where you're having to drop back 50 times. And so the issue was at left tackle, you're giving up like almost all of your quarterback hurries and sacks came at left tackle. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that Caden Siraki is your best pass protection left tackle, but he had to play right tackle for Campbell Barrington. So now getting Barrington back, which Aranda said he's back this week. So I don't know why he wouldn't be. And then moving Siraki back to left tackle, at least you have an identity. And for the most part, this whole offensive line has been much better in pass protection. Alvin Abaselli is actually their best run blocker right now. And, he's also been so far this year graded as their worst pass protector. And so that's kind of the dilemma that they've been dealing with. Dave Aranda's mentioned it, that it's like, how do you find this right balance? How do you get, Alvin and Caden to be one guy? How do you make that be one guy? But since they don't have that, you got to lean into your strengths. And so far, the strength of the offensive line has been in pass protection. At least it's kind of leaning towards that way after the BYU game. It's getting there. And so then you're giving Sawyer a chance. You're giving him a chance to be effective in the pocket, giving him a chance to not take a bunch of hits, and also just feel comfortable. Like, when you just have to watch your offensive line because you're so nervous about getting hit, that's where things completely go awry for many offenses. And it doesn't seem like he's gotten to that point yet, which is going to be key. Because in this game, Iowa State's going to try to bring some unique blitzes. And then at times, they're only going to rush 3. And they're going to drop everyone back. And so it's kind of that game, right, where you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the defense doing? How do we identify these protections? And then how do we take advantage once those protections are identified? It's going to be really key for Baylor going forward. But I agree with you. I think in general, the pass protection's getting there. And I think as this season kind of moves on, I think Baylor's going to turn more and more into kind of a true air raid type team where you're just running the football sometimes and having to throw it a lot. That's just kind of where this season feels like it's going, because it feels like they're going to have more success doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the challenging part, especially with Baylor's early schedule. You look at Utah, BYU, even Colorado to a great extent. When we saw them, I don't want to say they shut down UCF, but a very strong rushing team had pretty strong success against UCF in their rush defense. It's not their strength by any means, but then you throw in BYU, now Iowa State. Like, they've had challenges up front that maybe they don't see nearly as much in the back end of the season. The issue is you got another game where you're facing a very good defensive front. And so if you can get out of this one and still feeling pretty good about your offense throwing the football, the run game potentially could open up a little bit more as you get deeper into the season. But that it goes kind of back for me of picking your spots to run the football. You don't want to become predictable and where you're just throwing the ball. You don't want to be Colorado, right? Like, you don't want to throw the ball so much. When Colorado started having success against UCF and really kind of in the Baylor game was when they committed to the run a little more. They're kind of Baylor and Colorado were like on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Like, Baylor was running the ball a lot early in the season. I mean, it's like 40 times per game. Colorado wasn't. Well, then Colorado's kind of coming back to the middle. They're running the ball a little bit more now against UCF. Now Baylor's trending away from it. They're kind of going back and saying we need to throw it a little bit more. But then it's all about picking your spots. Having a running back there that can catch the ball out of the backfield that gets you 15 yards on a little swing gate, or what, not a swing gate, like a swing out to the flat, or is a light box and you identify it. And you go and get 6 or 7 or 8 yards. And Colorado, I think, is a perfect example of that. If you watch their game against UCF, it's like, we're not going to try to bang our heads against the wall. But when you show us a light box, we're going to check into that run and take advantage of those opportunities. And it's not going to be on 3rd and 1, right? Like, it's not going to be in those situations where we have to get 1 yard. They're going to load the box in those instances, but it's the 2nd and 7 or a 1st and 10 where it's not necessarily expected. And they show you something. We'll check into it and get those yards when you can to take plays off of Sawyer and make it a little bit easier for the offense and make the Iowa State particular defense account for that a little bit more. So, I mean, I think there's a variety of keys for this particular game. But just like the defense, it's like figuring out how to win at the offensive line, utilizing your strengths. And if you have to throw it 65 times in this game, I don't think they will, but if they have to throw it that many times, they don't not do it, because you have to do everything you can to win this game.
Yeah, you do. It's just 65 throws feels like,
oh yeah, that's a little high. You're
probably going to turn it over a few times, but I think in general, you're right. I mean, you got to lean into your strengths. I do think that if they're going to have a chance of winning this game, they are going to have to be able to run it a little bit. I don't know that I trust the passing game enough to think that, you're just going to go in there and throw for 350 yards in Ames. That's tough for me to imagine. And so, again, being able to control up front enough running in situations where it's advantageous to run the football, running Sawyer Robertson to give you, more blockers than there are defenders in the box is very important as well. I think all of those things could lead Baylor to having some success. And honestly, the area that Iowa State hasn't been great on is third down. They're 81st in the country in third down conversion defense. And so they're perfectly fine giving up first downs. And Baylor needs to be saying, okay, great. We'll just get this first down and then get back up and it's first down again. And I think being okay with that, right, in those 3rd and 2 situations, 4th and 1 situations, just getting the first down and being good with that, and maybe just kind of finding those advantages to run the football or finding those times to run the football could be very important. Iowa State's great at that. They'll give up first downs all the way down the field, and then they'll just suffocate you in the red zone. And that's been an area that they've been amazing at really during all of Matt Campbell's time there. And so that's going to be a challenge in of itself when you get close to scoring and both sides kind of, focus and really buckle down. Can Baylor still win in those situations? I think is also very key. You can win inside the 20s, but games are won once you get, inside goal to go territory inside the red zone. That's where you're able to win football games, and Baylor's going to have some success there.
Yeah, I mean, as much as Iowa State wants to shorten games with their offense, they're trying to do it with their defense too. So like you mentioned, they're currently 9th in the Big 12 in third down conversions, but they're 1st in red zone touchdown percentage allowed at 20%. So they're going to give up 40% on third down. So if you're getting in 3rd and short, you have a decent shot of converting it. That's not what the style they're looking for. But then you get into the red zone, they're like, we're just completely taken away. They're schemed, they're schooled. They're going to do really well in those areas. And I want to go back to the spread. And I love getting long into these things because I always have to mention it. But like, if Baylor wants to gives a 3-man front, if Michael Trigg can become a matchup problem for anybody, I think running to his side of the field when guys are having to get pulled out of the box into a 3-man front is very important, because you take it, say a linebacker or a safety, either one that's responsible for covering Michael Trigg. Well, it automatically opens up a defender on that side of the field. And I think you can take weak side or strong side, depending on which way you want to go. But like that might be the area that we didn't see against BYU, because there was no respect for, no offense to Gavin Yates, of being a threat in the pass game. So you split out, and those guys that are accounting for him, it's less of a matchup concern. And maybe that's where Baylor was going to go in that particular game. Then last minute scratch, Michael Trigg's not out there. Our run game is shot. It's something to watch for me, is how Baylor manipulates the numbers for the run game in their favor, where they weren't able to do it against BYU.
Well, I will say this, and I think it kind of is in line with that. Baylor ran a lot of screens against BYU. Yeah. And I think Trigg not only kind of forcing the defense to play off a little bit more, but also Trigg being able to block. I think those two things. I know Gavin Yates is a good blocker, but if you're only worried about the blocking, it's much easier to kind of play up closer and not be worried about getting beat over the top. And so if you're able to create some space there, and then you have a good blocker on those screens, I mean, you're going to have opportunities. Like when they're able to get the ball to Monterey Baldwin, and then you got Josh Cameron and Michael Trigg out there blocking, it's tough. It's tough to get around those. And those plays can be extensions of the run game.
It's going to have to be. Yeah.
It has to be. And Baylor wants those to be. They want to get these short, easy completions and then allow their receivers to try to make plays and block against DBs. And I think that's another area that is pretty underrated about what Michael Trigg brings to this offense, even when he's not, catching touchdowns or going for massive gains. I think they want that, but also that part of the offense is very important when you have as many mouths to feed at wide receiver as Baylor does. They have a lot of weapons that they want to try to utilize. And the screen game, I think, is that other extension of the run game where Michael Trigg can be a big factor.
Yeah. So we're basically the 3rd game into the Sawyer Robertson era, really 4th. I mean, the Iowa State is the 4th game for him starting as a starting quarterback. I don't know if considering what was out last week, we still are kind of like, okay, where is this offense? What's the direction this offense is going? And this is going to be another week to find a little bit more out about this team and the direction they're going. So with all that, we're now done with our defensive picks from yesterday, done with offensive picks. We're going to move into game picks for this particular game. I think you said earlier in the week, I can't pick Baylor to win this game. I've been in the same boat. Like, I think there's a lot of reasons to say this is how Baylor could win this game if they do everything exceptionally well. But also you're facing a really good number 16 ranked team undefeated Iowa State. It's established culture, established schemes on both sides of the ball, good playmakers on both sides of the ball. It's going to be a challenge. There's a reason that this started off as like a 13.5-point spread. It's down. It even got down to as low as 11 that I saw, but it's still, double digits. That's still a big spread. Who knows where it ends up by the end of the game. So with all of that, what's your prediction for the outcome of this game on Saturday?
So I had Baylor losing this game in the offseason, and I've continued to think that they're going to lose this game. And Iowa State's done nothing to show me that, they're not good this season, or that they're kind of a team that Baylor can take advantage of. And so for that reason, I think Baylor's going to have a lot of problems moving the football in Ames. I think that they're going to come up against a really good secondary that they kind of haven't seen so far this year. And I think it's going to make things rather confusing, especially in that environment. And I don't trust them to run the football. And so, frankly, that's kind of all of that together leads me to believe they're probably only going to be able to score, I would think, maybe 14, maybe 17 points. That's kind of where I'm at with that. And then on the defensive side, I think they're going to play well. I think they're going to play well enough to keep Baylor in the game. But the problem is I think Iowa State's going to control time of possession far too much in this game. I think Baylor's defense is going to be on the field far too much. And so for that reason, I think they're going to score enough to kind of create that separation from Baylor. I don't think Iowa State's going to cover the 11.5, which is where it's currently at. But I do think they're going to win this game, not easily, but I think by the end of it, you'll know who the better team was on this day. Whereas, you look back to the BYU game for Baylor and the Colorado game, I think a lot of Baylor fans would be like, man, Baylor might have been the better team that day. In the Colorado game, I think they definitely were. The BYU game, okay, one team was way better in the first half, way better, and then the other team was way better in the second half. But I think in general, you're going to know who the better team is on this day. And so I'm going to take Iowa State to win this one 24-16.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think that's good. I mean, it comes down, obviously, if Baylor can move the ball consistently, then this game gets much more competitive. With what Iowa State wants to do on both sides of the ball, it's going to be a limited possession game. We know that. I mean, Matt Campbell's era, that's limited possessions. Once he's had the defenses where he wants it to be and the level they can play, it's just grind it out. Let's just get to the win however we can. If we get a lead, we're going to have the ability to sit on it and trust our defense. Because that's going to be limited possessions, limited points. The 11.5, and I think that's probably why we saw that line shoot down the way that it did so quick in the week, is because that's not how, like, Iowa State winning games by 14 points without just a barrage of bad play by their opposing team, which is possible. I don't want to say Baylor's immune to that, but I think they'll play pretty stable football. I think there's one lesson they've learned the last 2 weeks is we have to play stable football, and I think they're going to do their best effort to do that. Where a team like Baylor can take advantage of becoming a better team in the way, or sorry, let me say it like this. If Baylor is going to show me that they're a better team than what they've shown this far, it's taking advantage of the opponent's weaknesses. Okay, so where are those weaknesses? Is for Baylor, you can create some explosive plays in the secondary. They kind of shown that Iowa State's shown a tendency to do that. And then defensively, or offensively, it's Iowa State also giving up some they're not as suffocating in their linebacker position. So running the ball decently well enough and then taking and picking your spots downfield. I don't think Baylor's going to be able to do both of those in this particular game. Because of that, I think Baylor's defense will play well and no fault to their own. Iowa State will control the time of possession in this game because Baylor's offense cannot sustain drives long enough. So I'm looking at, like, unofficial prediction, but prediction like a 21-13 type of game. Iowa State doesn't cover, but they're going to get out to a potential lead, and then the game's just going to get super short. And they're going to be perfectly fine with that. So, like, if you're betting the under, I don't know what it is, but probably go with the under in this game. And
it's 44.5.
Yeah.
So if you're going with your score, you're in the under for sure.
Yeah. Like I see something like that. I see like 21-13. 23-10, somewhere in that range. And I hate to say that because I think Baylor's offense is improving and it's showing life with Jake Spavital. I just think Iowa State's going to be too good of a defense in this road environment. And when we will see Baylor's offense kind of emerge is in the back half of the season. The numbers are going to grow a little bit based on competition and the defenses that they're playing.
I agree. I think they're going to have a lot of opportunities in the second half of the season to score some points. Unfortunately, they've had to play what didn't appear to be a gauntlet at the beginning of the season has turned into one, because I think we all felt like Utah and Iowa State were going to be really good, but to see BYU be such a clear bowl team, and Colorado, both of them are very clearly bowl teams, was not really the expectation. And so it's made things a little bit tougher, but in the back half of the year, you're going to have a lot of opportunities, and it's just going to be about capitalizing on them. And who knows, maybe they get an opportunity on Saturday to pull off a pretty big upset as a double-digit underdog on the road in a night game in Ames. If they're able to put themselves in that situation, can this team find a way to win this type of game that has eluded them over the past 2 years?
Yeah, I think if they're going to win this game, it's going to come on the back of the defenses, getting turnovers, short fields where the offense doesn't have the sustained drives, winning field position battles. I think there is an advantage for Baylor in special teams. I would say has not shown great opportunities in kick returns, punt return coverage. Baylor, on the other hand, has been pretty good in those areas. Punting, same way. Like Baylor's punting is 53 yards per average. Iowa State's 39, which kind of surprised me. Iowa State always has really good special teams, so maybe that number's distorted a little bit. But if you can win in those areas in games that are close, maybe you put yourself in a chance to win. It's just going to be a challenge to do. Like, it's not easy winning up there. I don't know what their home record is. I don't think it's like BYU's, which was crazy.
It's not like Utah's. Yeah, Utah's was crazy. It kind of got ruined against Arizona, though.
Yeah, which, maybe you saw it coming, maybe you didn't see it coming. Utah's playing another game without Cam Rising. Kind of know what Isaac Wilson's strengths and weaknesses are, but yeah, it should be fascinating. I don't want to say that we're going to learn everything about Baylor this weekend, because we're not. I think the second half is going to teach us where Baylor really is. I'd say second half after the off week, we'll learn more about Baylor and where that offense is going to go, and how that in an off week, how much this team can grow.
Right. And I think to balance out kind of just this whole conversation going into this game, which is really unfortunate because it feels like we're kind of talking through this game because we're just like, not expecting a whole lot here, and then just wait till the Tech game where, we'll probably get more answers about Baylor. But, reality is that if you go in and lose this game, you're looking at 2-4 going into the bye week, which is very tough to overcome. I mean, that means you got to go 4-2 the rest of the way against a lot of teams that you haven't had a lot of success against. And so that's going to be a really interesting conversation if they do lose this game. But the more I look at it, it's like, man, you felt like you should have won the Colorado game. You felt like you should have won the BYU game. Can you show up and win a game that you're not supposed to win? Can you kind of make that right that wrong? You know what I mean? Those games where you feel like, we should have won that game. Well, show up again. Continue to give your best performance, and then this time start strong and finish strong. And who knows, maybe you're able to be in this game at the end, and maybe some fluke plays happen and you're able to capitalize on those, which, they haven't so far this year.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, they got to put it together. And ultimately for me, it's about going out and making plays. Go make the plays to win the games. They've done them in spots and then didn't fit. They made winning plays and then didn't finish. You look at the Colorado game, how many winning plays did they make in that game? And then they didn't make the ultimate game deciding play until there's 0 seconds on the clock and they convert on a Hail Mary. 2 chances in the fourth quarter against BYU to go and score the go-ahead touchdown. Didn't do it. Now it's time. Like, if this game's going to end up being a one-possession game potentially, how are you going to win it? Who's going to step up and make the play? I think there's players to do it. It's just tough to do it on this type of environment. So, all right, Baylor family, that's going to do it for today's episode of Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. Thanks to Garrison for joining Grayson earlier, and thanks to each of you for listening. For Grayson Grunhafer, I'm Colt Barber. Have a great Friday and a great game weekend, and Sick 'em Bears.